And one of you says to him, depart, and be filled, but you do not give them the things which are needed for the body. What does it profit? Thus, also faith by itself, if it does not have works, it's dead. I just want to share some thoughts on the power of faith and perseverance. I saw an interesting story the other day about an Indian man. His name was Dajrath Manji. His wife got sick and he needed to take her to the doctor, but the doctor was about 7 miles away. But there was a mountain between the city where he was and the doctor. And so he didn't make it and she died. When she died, he decided that he would carve a road into the mountain to ensure that what happened to his wife wouldn't happen to other people. And he decided to carve this road into the mountain on his own without any help, with just a hammer and a chisel. And for 22 years, every day after he went to work, he would chisel through the mountain. And after that period of 22 years, after being ridiculed and people saying that he was crazy and so on, it ended up that he was able to carve through the mountain, and now there's a road that allows people who need to get into the city to see the doctor or whatever else to get there. And it's just a remarkable, true story of faith and perseverance. He decided to do something to solve the problem when other people just looked at it and said it was impossible. And it's just a testament that if you have faith, if you believe, and if you go to work, things that seem impossible or unrealistic can become realistic. Amen? Amen. Let's bow our heads. Father God, we just thank you for this day. Thank you, Lord, for bringing us here once again. Thank you that we are healthy. Our country is recovering. Father, we thank you for continuing to guide us and direct us. Give us wisdom and understanding so that we may know how to proceed effectively for the benefit of the Bahamian people. We thank you for order, decorum, and for civil debate today. In Jesus' name. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Dr. Hubert Bennett, Peter Turnquest, Brent Simonet, Desmond Bannister, Randall Bell, Jeffrey Lloyd, Dr. Wayneside, Marvin James, Frankie Campbell, Denicio Diagula, Michael Pintard, Darren Henfield, Ramal Ferrero, Denisha Rowe, Granville Rowe, Ellsworth Johnson, Philip Davis, Vaughn Miller, Leticia Parker Edstrom, Aaron Lewis, Carlton Bolay, James Aubrey, Travis Robinson, Adrian Gibson, Donald Saunders, Frederick McElfine, Hank Johnson, Mark Hume, Michael Pope, Miriam Brackley Manuel, Hugh Shipman, Ruben Ramming, Ricky Mack, Shannon Dawn Cartwright, Chanel Ferguson, Lennis Hannah Martin, Faisal Forbes, Chester People.
Good morning, honorable members. Honorable members, just wanted to read a scripture and to mention something before we proceed. I received of video that is going viral with respect to an incident in the Nassau Village constituency. And the incident is really about an individual who has taken it upon himself to encroach on the private territories of other persons. I just want to read Romans 13, beginning at verse 1. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. I just want to say at this time that I fully endorse the initiative taken by the government, particularly in Abaco, with respect to persons who, first of all, enter the country illegally and then take it upon themselves to disobey the laws of the land. Bahamian citizens are compelled by the Constitution and our laws to obey our laws, and any other visitor, whether they were invited or they came without invitation, is subject to the laws of the land. And as such, I would accept and expect the authorities to intervene in that circumstance in Nassau Village on behalf of the people of Nassau Village. Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Speaker, I want to say that I thank you for sharing the information with me yesterday. I also thank you for the message that you're sending. It's absolutely critical for all of us to appreciate the need for us to obey the regulations that we have for our own safety, for the safety of everybody else. We are going into hurricane season, colleagues, and the Building Regulations Act is absolutely critical for the safety of Bahamians, compliance with it. The staff at the Ministry of Public Works are dedicated to being able to ensure compliance. But we really need the support of the Bahamian people. And so where there are infractions that are observed, it's important for all of us to feel that we have an obligation, a very, very serious obligation, to report it to building control. In Hurricane Dorian, the police officers and defense force officers in this country put their lives at risk to rescue people who lived in, I hate to say, building structures that did not meet with the legal requirements. And it's going to be important for us, bearing in mind what projections are for this year, that we continue to keep in mind the necessity to simply comply with the law. And I'm grateful that you're sending that message, sir. And we will seek to do our best to assist, starting with Nassau Village.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Killarney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery, North Andros, Central Andros, and Cat Island Lockdown Amendment Number 2, Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table a copy of the following: Emergency Powers, COVID-19 Pandemic, Management and Recovery, Bullock Harbor and Great Harbor Key Lockdown Amendment Number 3, Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table a copy of the following: the Financial Transactions Reporting Amendment Regulations 2021.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Price Control General Amendment Number 5, Regulations 2021.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes.
Speaker, there are no further laying of documents by ministers.
Thank you, honorable member. Statements and communications by ministers. Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentation of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the second reading following the Appropriation Revenue Account Expenses 2021-2022 Bill 2021. A bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and toward defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of Bahamas on revenue accounts for the financial year commencing 1st of July 2021 and ending 30th of June 2021. Mr. Speaker, there are quite a number of bills, and we're going to debate all the bills as a compendium as we commence this debate, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable. Honorable member, can you indicate the lead bill for us?
Yes,
The lead, okay. Thank you, honorable member. You may resume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I start, there have been confusion during the last three budget debates as to which member on the opposite side would take the 3 hours. 2 hours. 2 hours, Mr. Speaker. I think that matter should be clarified now so that the entire House and the Bahamas would know who has the 2 hours and there'd be no confusion as was during the past 3 years. So I asked the leader of the opposition as to who would take the 2 hours.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angleston.
Right, leader.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I want to indicate to the Parliament that the leader of the official opposition, Honorable Philip Davis, member from Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, will have the 2 hours in this Parliament to make the case for the Progressive Liberal Party.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Killarney.
Thank you very much, future leader. Mr. Speaker, before I start, I want to thank you would note that I have a new stand or podium here.
New lecture.
And I want to thank the member for Carmichael. Who had made such a beautiful podium, self-contained here for me. And I understand that other members will follow as he's gracious. Mr. Speaker, it is my privilege to open the debate on the financial year 2021-2022 budget. And I do so on behalf of the resilient and determined Bahamian people and on behalf of the wonderful people of Killarney. And I wish Bahamians everywhere an early happy Labor Day as we celebrate the hard work, the creativity, and the dedication of Bahamian workers. Mr. Speaker, I wish to extend condolences to the family of the late Mrs. Melvania Adelaide Cash, who passed away on the 25th of May this year. Mrs. Cash joined the public service in August 1975, serving in the Ministry of Health, the House of Assembly, Ministry of Financial Services and Investment, and the Office of the Prime Minister. She served with extraordinary dedication, commitment, and professionalism for some 46 years. And it is with gratitude that we remember her service to the government and people of the Bahamas. Mrs. Cash, Mr. Speaker, was scheduled to begin pre-retirement leave in October of this year. And may I offer my personal condolence and the prayers and thoughts of the staff of the Office of Prime Minister to her husband, Herbert, her children, Nishan, Shakira, Herbert Ronaldo Jr., and Ishando Cash, her sisters and brothers, and all her relatives. May her soul rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, the budget follows a period where the Bahamas experienced a historic Category 5 hurricane and a global health pandemic, both within the same year, same financial year, 2019-2020. And these unprecedented events severely disrupted the positive fiscal and economic direction of the Bahamas. These unprecedented events, Mr. Speaker, disrupted the hard-won gains the country embarked upon pre-Dorian to clean up the financial mess left by our predecessors in office. The Bahamas was on track to achieve the largest deficit reduction we have seen in over 20 years. We were on path to balancing national budget. We began making necessary changes to create more opportunity and ownership of our economy by more Bahamians. And despite the unexpected setbacks we experienced as a people and as a government, we are on the way to coming back strong. But, Mr. Speaker, we still face many challenges. Unemployment levels remain high. Families and businesses are still struggling. Government revenues are down. Significant resources are still required for social welfare and small business support programs, and to support the private sector in its recovery efforts. But the tide is turning because of our policies, because of our discipline, and our determination to restore our Bahamas, to improve economic and public health. We can see the recovery, Mr. Speaker, even though there is still much more work to be done. As I have already noted, Hurricane Dorian and COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated deeply rooted economic and fiscal structural issues that predate this administration. Historically, economic growth for the Bahamas has been between 3 to 4%, and growth has often been at levels too low to reap sustained and meaningful results across the many sectors of our economy. The years after the 2008 financial crisis and the Great Recession that followed were especially difficult. For the decades that followed, growth in most years was flat or negative. As other tourism destinations developed their offerings, we have seen an increase in competition. The offshore financial services sector, our number 2 industry, has been shrinking due to a vastly different and much more stringent global regulatory environment. The manufacturing, mining, and agricultural sectors have seen their proportion of distributions to the economic output decreasing over time. And since the onset of the pandemic, the contraction across economic sectors has been even more pronounced. Mr. Speaker, the economic contraction and unemployment in the wake of the catastrophic Hurricane Dorian and the pandemic required substantial and sustained levels of government support to manage and to contain their impact. And together, these factors led to declining government revenue, greater expenditure, and an increasing fiscal deficit. Necessary border closures and travel restrictions resulted in significantly reduced tax and other revenue from tourism, our main industry. The COVID-19 pandemic also required a number of lockdown measures to contain the spread of the virus from incoming visitors and to reduce community spread and illness and death of the him. As a result, Mr. Speaker, our fiscal position weakened even further, as have just about every country in the world. Indeed, some of our regional neighbors are in worse fiscal shape than the Bahamas. We projected a deficit of $1.3 billion, roughly 11.3% of GDP for the fiscal year 2020-2021. This is a level never experienced in the Bahamas. But underpinning this temporary expansion of deficit were a number of key policy initiatives funded by the government to provide consistent support for those affected by the downturn. Spending on households through the Unemployment Benefit and Assistance Program, food assistance, and other social sector support for the fiscal year has totaled more than $160 million through the end of March 2021. But even as we had to begin the rebuilding and recovery from Hurricane Dorian and fight the worst pandemic in 100 years, we had vision to build back better and stronger as a country. This vision, Mr. Speaker, can be seen in our plans, our policies, and our programs for a more dynamic Bahamas with growth in many sectors of our economy. Our vision includes greater opportunity for all, including education and healthcare, as a part of our program of social justice and equality. And the Speaker, member for Bamboo Town, the Minister of Health, will elaborate on the health program with respect to telehealth, telemedicine, the direction of the National Health Insurance Program. And I'm certain that the Minister of Education, member for South Beach, the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd, will expand on the educational component with respect to futuristic development and projections with online education and expansion and centralizing our educational system so that the numbers of teachers and staff would not be as required, trying to duplicate on every island, which is almost humanly impossible. Mr. Speaker, our vision includes greater ownership of the economy by Bahamians, including small and medium-sized businesses ownership, land ownership, home ownership, shares for Bahamians in enterprises like the new cruise port in downtown Nassau, and greater ownership in sectors like tourism, agriculture, fisheries, the digital economy, and the creative economy. We are focused on economic growth for a better future for all Bahamians. If we are to position ourselves to return to lower deficits, lower debt, and a balanced budget, we must accelerate the pace of economic growth and recovery. We must do so in a sustained way. The fruits of economic growth cannot only be felt by a few. This is a matter, Mr. Speaker, of economic justice. We are focused on a better future for all. Whether you hail from Baintown, Golden Gates, or Fox Hill, or New Providence, or Matthewtown in Agua, Gregorytown, Eleuthera, Elbow Key, or Morris Island, Abaco, or Freeport and West End, Grand Bahama. Because we are a commonwealth, Mr. Speaker, the commonwealth of our Bahamas must be enjoyed by all Bahamians. Poor and working families must be able to see improved opportunities and better standards of living. Middle-income families must be able to see improved opportunities and standards of living. Our vision, Mr. Speaker, is that of wealth creation and ownership for Bahamians of every walk of life on every island. Every island, key, and settlement in this Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We will ensure that wealth becomes common to all. Mr. Speaker, government has its role.
We're on our way, Mark.
But we must continue to create more dynamic public-private partnerships to build the billions of dollars in infrastructure we need to significantly increase growth, opportunity, and ownership. Government alone, Mr. Speaker, cannot finance all the critical infrastructure the Bahamas requires for dynamic and sustained growth throughout our archipelago. We are determined to unleash the vast economic potential of our family islands, which is why we have embarked on the expansion of modern international airports in key islands. The residents of our family islands must be able to see improved opportunities and standard of living within this Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We must also, Mr. Speaker, invest in our family islands so that more Bahamians may consider moving to various family islands where they can work and raise their families. Our efforts, Mr. Speaker, must ensure that more Bahamians have the opportunity to become self-employed and to become shareholders in commercial enterprises. Our efforts, Mr. Speaker, must ensure that more Bahamians have the opportunity to become self-employed and to become shareholders in commercial enterprises. Mr. Speaker, our vision and plans will empower Bahamians to have greater ownership in the export sectors of our economy, including tourism, financial services, and the global digital services industry. Our creative economy should also be a source of exports. Even as we create jobs, we must foster Bahamian business owners who will help to create thousands of more jobs. Our plans have been formulated to ensure that we do not repeat the no-growth, low-growth decade that followed the 2008 recession, Great Recession. We have articulated a vision and a future for the Bahamian economy that is resilient, that is inclusive, that is dynamic, Pinewood, and most of all, sustainable. We have outlined plans to realize this vision. First, through the Resilient Bahamas Plan, which focused on providing an immediate response to the twin crisis while planting the seeds to expand our recovery and our economy. Second, the work of the Economic Recovery Committee has formulated many of the plans we are proposing, and this includes the greatest revamp and restructuring of our foreign direct investment structure and regime since independence. This new investment promotion and approval process will be known as Invest Bahamas. The Invest Bahamas idea, Mr. Speaker, is a direct result of the work of the Economic Recovery Committee. And thirdly, through the ideas of the Accelerated Bahamas Recovery Plan, we are positioning to grow our way out of our current situation. Mr. Speaker, because we are committed to policies that serve all Bahamians, all Bahamians, and not just a few political cronies and colleagues like some in the past. I am pleased to announce the following measures. Listen, Pinewood. Something here, people. Pinewood. Okay, anyhow, you'll be pine past anyhow. Last year, Mr. Speaker, last year, my administration introduced legislation that permitted the Minister of Finance, Mr. Speaker, last year, my administration introduced legislation that permitted the Minister of Finance to provide VAT holidays up to 2 times per year for up to 30 days for specific reasons. He then introduced the back to school VAT holiday last August. And this provided Bahamian households with VAT free shopping on a range of school supplies as they got their children ready for the new academic year. The VAT holiday, Mr. Speaker, provided millions of dollars in savings across the country and were boosted by Bahamian businesses. And this year, we are once again undertaking a back-to-school VAT holiday during the month of August. Mr. Speaker, the hurricane season began yesterday, June 1st, and lasts until November 31st. I remind Bahamians and residents to begin their hurricane preparedness. To assist with these preparations, this year, for the first time, we will undertake a VAT holiday for hurricane preparations. And this will be during the month of July. This will assist Bahamians and residents to enjoy VAT-free shopping on a range of critical hurricane supplies and equipment. The Ministry of Finance will provide the details of the dates and the items to be included in the VAT-free shopping. I remind, thank you very much, Pine Ridge. Pine Ridge. I still like you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, I remind the House and Bahamian residents that the VAT holidays are only applicable for eligible items purchased inside the country from local wholesalers and retailers. We want people to shop at home so that this money stays at home and benefits Bahamian businesses and, by extension, all of the employees of these commercial enterprises.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you.
So, Mr. Speaker, my message to everyone is that they should use the month of July to get their homes and businesses ready for the hurricane season. Take advantage of the savings and avoid the rush. Mr. Speaker, my government has a bold vision, major plans, and dynamic ideas for our future. Indeed, we are already investing an extraordinary amount of public resources in this future. The people of Exuma, they realize this. They are going to get a new $65 million international airport. Their roadway, the FNM did that. Their roadway is being repaved, resurfaced. A new township is to follow. New government complex, housing, as I would explain as I advance through this debate. New design roadway to facilitate the expansion and growth that we expect of Exuma. And expansion of the telehealth program. Mr. Speaker, the people of Cat Island are getting a modern, comprehensive, portable water system.
The FNM do that again?
The FNM did that. With piped portable water to each and every home in Cat Island.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador on a point of order.
Point of order I make is that not every home in Cat Island would have the opportunity to have potable water. It is a select area that excludes clinics and hospitals. I'm asking him to just clarify that point. Not every home in Cat Island is together.
Honorable members. Honorable members.
Mr. Speaker,
Honorable members.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I would only say,
Honorable members.
Mr. Speaker, I would only say that poor and bad representation had not advanced Cat Island. Speaker, Grand Bahama.
You got no shame.
Grand Bahama has already seen phase 1 of the rebuilt Grand Memorial Hospital. And approximately $11.6 million
You enjoyed the tour, eh, Mark?
was awarded for several local companies for construction works
More to come.
that culminated
We going up.
in the recommissioning of the RAN and
Honorable
central
members.
institution
The member for
serving
Kamani
the people.
speaking. It's difficult when you engage each other across the floor while a member is speaking, especially from the converted gallery. I can hear the converted gallery all the way up here at the chair. So you must be projecting very loudly. So I just ask that you respect the member who has the floor so that we can hear his presentation.
Mr. Speaker, allow me to repeat that $11.6 million was awarded for several local companies for construction works that culminated in the recommissioning of the RAN, an essential institution serving the people of Grand Bahama. And when the Minister of Health speaks, he will expand on the way forward for Grand Bahama. Phase 2 for the RAN is in train. Grand Bahama, Mr. Speaker, is going to get one of the best international airports in this region, following the government's purchase of the Freeport International Airport. Grand Bahama will see an extraordinary revival of cruising to the island, resulting in much more economic opportunity and jobs. Thousands more young Bahamians can now attend the University of Bahamas and BTVI tuition free. Speaker, we have made UB, University of Bahamas, BTVI, BAMSI, all free to Bahamians, thus saving their families anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000, increasing their disposable income so that they can spend on other items and entities. Preschool is being made available for our 3- and 4-year-olds. And the government recognized that we don't have sufficient preschools within the government sector, had invited the private sector who are participating and is given $2,000 per student just to ensure that our preschoolers have the proper educational tools. And recognizing, Mr. Speaker, that individuals traveling from the Family Islands face a greater challenge than those here in New Providence. Each and every student traveling from the Family Island to attend the University of Bahamas is given $500 per month. To assist with their accommodation while here in New Providence. Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, recognizing that some preschools may have needed some upgrade government had made available $1 million for such upgrade, and at least 36 schools have applied and taken advantage of $25,000, thus upgrading their schools and becoming certified. Grant money. Essential to say that. Grant money. And so those who don't understand it, I'm not talking with Mary Grant, George Grant, or Paul Grant. Grant is free. Free. Then, in addition to that, Mr. Speaker, recognizing that some of our islands do not have preschools available, however, so as not to marginalize any of our students throughout the Bahamas, we are making land available to Bahamian with such skills who would be granted this land and at the same time have access to at least $25,000 to assist with their building of a preschool. They would be allowed to build such schools duty-free. And in addition to that, Mr. Speaker, so as to ensure that all of our students have such a great start. Each and every student, those individuals, again, will receive $2,000 per student. And Mr. Speaker, we recognize that the needs are there for Inagua, Long Island. Ministry had done research in Inagua, Long Island, Lutra, Abaco, Andres, and even Grand Bahama. So, Mr. Speaker, I would urge Bahamians who have such skills and knowledge to take advantage of such facilities. Downtown Nassau, Mr. Speaker, is going through a major revitalization and one of the largest building exercises in the city of Nassau in our history. We are developing programs for ownership, including an 83-acre parcel of land in the Prospect Ridge area near Bahama for young professionals. Just in case individuals are not aware of its location, near the office of the Prime Minister and near the residence of the Ambassador of the United States of America. Speaker, such development well on its way. Plans are well on its way. Those lands, as I said before, will worth a minimum of $150,000. However, the real estate agent would inform you that lands in that area would probably start with all the infrastructure in place at about $220,000 to $250,000. Am I correct, Mr. Simonet? And Mr. Speaker, to show that we are government for and of the people, those land would be sold to our Bahamian citizens. Multifamily, $50,000. $40,000, my apology. No, $50,000, my apology. And single family, $40,000. Let me repeat. Multifamily, which is somewhat commercial, $50,000, and single family, $40,000. These areas, Mr. Speaker, will have restrictive covenant and ordinance, so as there be no power repairs or anything of such nature. And other islands are to follow. I must announce at this particular time that we have 2 additional plots of such land in the west, and we've identified land thus far in Lutra and Exum. We will continue search throughout the Bahamas archipelago We continue to invest in the people and the needs of the over-the-hill communities, Mr. Speaker. And anyone who travel over the hill would see the changes of the Southern Recreation Ground. Water is being connected now in the Quaco Street area. And Mr. Speaker, I am so fond and admire the works, ingenuity, drive, and ambition of many of those in the over-the-hill area. Many people, they argue that the government is giving away taxes, concessions, etc., and would find itself in problems. I am a strong believer that a reduction in taxes stimulates growth, not the opposite. And Mr. Speaker, a point here, perfect example, Mr. Speaker, in the inner city, 49 individuals entered a program for financial assistance to commence their own business. 49 individuals. The inner city have taken advantage of the tax concessions that are offered to the tune of $2.5 million up to May of last year, up to November of last year, my apologies. And 49 individuals had gotten $122,000 plus a few hundred as grants via the SDBC to assist them in their businesses. Listen carefully, Brian, with $4.5 million. $2.5 million were utilized in concessions. 49 individuals, $122,000 grants. Those 49 individuals, Mr. Speaker, were able to employ 142 individuals. They created employment. In addition to that, listen to this. They took advantage of $122,000. The entire inner city took advantage of only 2.5 million in concession. But those 49 individuals, Mr. Speaker, was able to generate $4.5 million within our country.
This coming. You know what the good book says? There's seed time and harvest. Summer and day and night. You understand that, fine, right? You understand that? Seed time and harvest.
Mr. Speaker, throughout our family islands, we are improving the lives of residents with new waterworks, roads, bridges, ports, and other vital structures. We continue to invest in the people and the needs of the over-the-hill communities. We have invested in one term more direct funding for small business development than any government in the history of the Bahamas. And thankfully, Mr. Speaker, the Free National Movement is not like the discredited PLP, which left the country in a terrible economic shape. Since 2017, Mr. Speaker, my government has proudly put forward and enacted a range of modern and comprehensive fiscal reform legislation and policies. They require and will require this and future governments to be more accountable and transparent. For their part, the PLP is mostly about idle political posturing and political expediency. My government, Mr. Speaker, is about doing what is right for the Bahamian people especially during this pandemic when our priority was to save lives. Sadly, the leader of the opposition seemed more interested in scoring political points to try to boost his poll numbers. The PLP desperately want to get back, as people would say. What was that? The cookie jar? At the cookie jar, I guess. But every Bahamian child knows Cookie Monster on Sesame Street. Like Cookie Monster, the PLP has the history of raiding what? The cookie jar. Oh. They are very greedy for cookies. They seem every time they get a chance, they attack the cookie jar without mercy. Every time Cookie Monster sees some cookies, he can't help himself. Mr. Speaker, after I delivered the budget communication last Wednesday, it was curious, though not surprising, to watch the response of the opposition, a copy of which I have with me. They responded with their typical canned response. Central to their knee-jerk response was the curious and jokey claim that this administration had no plan, no ideas, no strategy for economic growth, or no big vision for our future. I guess, Mr. Speaker, as they made those statements, they were looking at the mirror at themselves. And I am being charitable when I label their claims as jokey. I say jokey because clearly the side opposite true form seemed not to be listening or was not interested as we set ourselves to the people's business. This is the same sad playbook, Mr. Speaker, as when the leader of the opposition asks, and I quote, "Where is the science?" End quote. When we detailed our plans to save lives during the pandemic. Either he does not listen to or does not understand the science, given the multiple public briefings by our health experts, including our own Dr. Mercelin Dahl-Regis, who is recognized as one of the leading public health experts in our region. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, Dr. Dahl-Regis was the first Caribbean female and second Caribbean native to receive the prestigious Pan American Health Organization Public Health Hero of the Americas Award. It is from individuals like her from whom we are receiving expert medical and scientific advice. Perhaps if the leader of the opposition listened more carefully, he would learn more about science and medicine rather than making many of the foolish comments he continues to make. Mr. Speaker, our economic vision and plans were clear in the budget communications I delivered, but they seem not to have eyes to see nor ears to hear, because they must realize just how much we have done for the Bahamian people, even in the face of what some have called the storm of the century, with Hurricane Dorian and the pandemic of the century with COVID-19. And Mr. Speaker, let us not forget that we also faced another hurricane, Hurricane Irma. With Hurricane Irma, we did what many thought would have been impossible. Our focus was again to save lives. We air evacuated those from the southern islands to the central island, moving them, mobilizing all aircraft available to us, and moving them from the path of the hurricane, bringing them into central area, and thus, Mr. Speaker, not one life was lost. This is unprecedented, never done in the history of the Bahamas. Despite these unprecedented events, Mr. Speaker, this administration continues to move the country forward. And I'm certain that this must disturb the PLP to no end. This is why, Mr. Speaker, they keep repeating the same canned and convincing foolishness. But they are not convincing nor distracting the Bahamian people with their empty sounds and furious nonsense. Mr. Speaker, when my administration came to office in May 2017, our most pressing task was to ensure the passage of a budget for fiscal year 2017-2018. This was necessary for the continuation of essential government services. The budget preparation exercise was well underway. Given the time constraints, this administration reluctantly accepted the prepared draft budget. However, we were horrified by the planning or lack thereof the PLP engaged in to design its last budget. Thereafter, my administration immediately implemented structured policies and commitments to ensure accountability, to ensure transparency were ever present. By the following year, this administration implemented fiscal responsibility legislation. We established a dedicated website for budget fiscal information. We began releasing quarterly updates on government finances and released our annual fiscal strategy and plan to manage the government finances. If anyone was waiting to see how the election turned out before administering any real medicine for what ails us, it was the opposition. That is just one reason, Mr. Speaker, why they're on that side of this honorable house, and I am certain the Bahamian people will ensure that they continue to remain on that side. Exuma, I won't remind you today yet that you should have been on this side, but when I wrap up, we would deal with that. Right, Feinrich? Feinrich? Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we are beginning to see signs of recovery because of the responsible reopening of our borders, because of the rollout of vaccines, and because of the global economic rebound, especially of the United States of America. Our efforts so far have addressed the immediate challenges of our current situation while planting the seeds for the future. I say planting the seeds, Mr. Speaker, because the Accelerate Bahamas Recovery Plan is designed to help those seeds to become seedlings, then blossom and grow at a breakneck pace. This recovery plan, Mr. Speaker, aims to expedite inclusive private sector growth and the reforms necessary to support and sustain that growth. These targeted stimulus policies, reforms, and other initiatives are intended to boost overall economic expansion. They're intended to create jobs, to support small business development, to continue healthcare sector support, and to invest in the resilience of core economic sectors. This recovery plan, Mr. Speaker, is also designed to boost tourism development, advance private and public sector investment, and make government a better facilitator of growth through digitization and innovation while restoring our fiscal health. Fundamental to our vision and our plans are private sector expansion and public sector reform, which are tied together. Our focus on private sector expansion will unlock the potential of small and medium-sized businesses and entrepreneurs by providing tax concessions, jump-starting hiring, increasing access to capital, garnering domestic and foreign direct investment, and providing new opportunities for ownership through development like home porting. And this recovery plan advances the steady march of our government reform agenda, and this includes the continuation of much needed fiscal reform, implementing a strategy for debt management, improving tax administration, and hastening the digitization of the public sector. The Accelerate Bahamas Plan, recovery plan, will help to arrest our economic contraction. It will help to set us on a path to sustain year-over-year economic growth. We will do so through investment in private sector expansion, support of new and existing small businesses, and leveraging fresh opportunities that are being born out of this crisis. We are confident, Mr. Speaker, that employment will increase and the government revenues will rebound. Mr. Speaker, this is a budget for the medium and long term, unlike the budget of the last PLP government, in which leader of the opposition was the deputy prime minister. Leading up to the last election, the then PLP government planned for a $100 million deficit. Then they ignored their budget and ran up a deficit of $660 million, never informing the Bahamian people. I'm going to table the document again, that they were running well over their fiscal targets. And
The chair recognizes the honorable member for the Exumas and Ragged Island on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, if the member for Kalani wishes to be honest, he will identify that during that period, I believe there were 2 hurricanes during that same period, Mr. Speaker.
I'm happy you now recognize Irma, you recognize Dorian, and now you recognize COVID.
The chair recognizes the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador on a point of order.
And whilst we acknowledge the 2 hurricanes of Joaquin, he should also acknowledge that the method of calculating the deficit was changed by this administration. In fact, the central bank's deficit number was 231 million, not the 260 that he had said. He said 660 million. But the central bank numbers was 231.
Speaker, all the documents will be provided there. We must remember this deficit does not include the more than 300 million in obligations and arrears that were not accounted for in any budget.
370.
That were not accounted for in any budget or document brought to Parliament or shared with the Bahamian people.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. A point of order.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, the methodology of determining the deficit was changed by the administration. In fact, that was the time when the former Minister of Finance suggested that all previous Ministers of Finance was dishonest in the presentation of the budget. Dishonest. in the presentation of the budget.
Tenure, I am certain that
So, Mr. Speaker,
I am certain that the former.
And further, Mr. Speaker, whilst he comes to make his point, further, Mr. Speaker, it is the member who indicated in the budget they came and borrowed $700 million before July 1st, and it was then said it was to pay these what they call unaccounted bills. That's what they said. That's why they sought to borrow the monies before July 1st. That's what they did. And these numbers were then accounted for in there according to them. So to say it wasn't accounted for is a blatant disrespect for the truth.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
It is unfortunate that the member for Cat Island continues to try to mislead the Bahamian people. And I don't know why he wants to draw me into this debate. I will have my debate at some point, and you will have your debate at some point. I don't know why you want to draw me into this. But let me help you. First, I've said over and over here to this same charge that the basis of accounting for government finances has not changed over the last 4 years. It has not changed. The same basic. What has changed, and I think this is what you're trying to say, is that the presentation of the budget book is different, because this book seeks to give more detail and it seeks to give more information to you and the Bahamian people. We've also said that we are moving towards public sector accounting standards, which calls for accrual-based accounting. We are not there yet. We will get there, and the project is in train, but we are not there. And so the member for Cat Island is absolutely incorrect, and he is misleading the Bahamian people. The last point that I will address. No, I'm not finished. Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point, member. The last point is the member made some statement that I said that all former ministers were disingenuous. I never made any such statement, and I would challenge him to either prove it or withdraw it, because I never said it.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and Salvador.
What I will do at this time, I will withdraw the statement that he indicated that all were dishonest until I'm able, and once I bring the communication in which that was said, I just want the opportunity to bring it to you. I know it was said. I withdraw it for this time. He wants me to disprove it. I will bring and quote what he said from his communication. I just want that opportunity at the right time. So I withdraw it right now, and I'll bring it to your communication.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael on a point of order.
Stay right there. Stay right there, man. This finance.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, we have noted the point that was taken by the member for Exuma. And I anticipate that he is going to speak about deficit when he speaks. We'll wait for that. But just to remind him, that under the former administration, I'm remembering this, the walking damage was 120 million. Matthew damage was 580 million. He had a total of $700 million. That's what you're relying on. Dorian alone was $3.4 billion. So if you criticize us for deficit, just remember what the figures really were. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
The member for East Grand Bahama had dealt with the leader of opposition adequately. However, leader of opposition, all the details are in here. And if you want to come to my office anytime, I'd gladly go with this with you. Mr. Speaker, and then so as to add more information for the member who questioned figures. If you look at the arrears, member want exact figure, 428,755,293. So imagine that, Mr. Speaker. Imagine that. Can you imagine? Even though it is hard to imagine, they left almost $1 billion in unfunded bills and arrears.
My.
And they kept mostly hidden from the Bahamian people. Under this administration, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people get a report every quarter.
Every quarter.
On budgetary affairs. Which the PLP are quick to criticize. Mark, I see you getting fired up.
I'm ready to go. Ready to go.
I guess, Mr. Speaker, they seriously expect my administration and the Bahamian people to take them seriously, despite them leaving the country nearly $1 billion in bill that they mostly hid from the people. The PLP are the last one anyone should listen to on fiscal and budgetary matters. They have no quarterly fiscal report. They had no annual fiscal strategy report.
Shame.
They had no dedicated budget website.
Goodness.
And all of these things are things we did. And now, Mr. Speaker, the country is better informed on budgetary and fiscal matters than they ever were before. And guess what, Pine Ridge? Guess what? The PLP did not contribute to any of that. They did not leave behind any of that. All they left was nearly $1 billion in bills and arrears that neither Parliament nor the public were aware of. The PLP and their members cannot lecture anybody on fiscal matters. Their track record gives them no ground, no credibility to speak on these things. Mr. Speaker, as the first signs of the pandemic emerged on our shores in March 2020, this administration was faced with difficult choices. To protect our people, we had to close our borders. Combined with the global economic downturn, the impact has been a contraction in our output of 5.8% for fiscal year 2020-21. And when the global economic contraction commenced and many businesses were challenged to pay their staff, we had the choice of where, how, and how long government should provide assistance. We made the right choice to support private sector and support the livelihoods of families. This support has required us to provide 19 months of payroll support, now in excess of $118 million. $53 million in loans to support small businesses and $44 million as part of our job retention tax credit program. This, Mr. Speaker, is unprecedented government support. And let me make the point even stronger. Despite these unprecedented and extraordinary times, we kept all civil service jobs and maintained salary payments. We did not, Mr. Speaker, have the luxury like the UK for $303 billion, or the luxury of the US for $6 trillion. Mr. Speaker, to address and to mitigate as much as possible the cycle of economic growth and economic contraction that have persisted in the Bahamas for generations, we must continue to address certain structural economic issues. We believe that with targeted structural reforms, consistent growth in the range of 5 to 6% is well within our grasp. Our approach to addressing various fundamental structural issues is centered around two central pillars. The first is private sector expansion. The pillar focuses on unlocking the potential of our private sector through a variety of means, and these include judicious tax concessions. And Over the Hill community shows that it works. Expanding into new economic sector, that is sector territories, such as with home porting opportunities for taxis, tours, hotel rooms, beaches, dives, and most of all, return visits. And you want to again remind the straw vendors that they should get prepared and they should all consider becoming vaccinated. Mr. Speaker, it also includes legislative reforms and improving access to capital for entrepreneurs and the more than 38,000 small and medium-sized businesses in the Bahamas, which accounts for over 90% of our entire business license database. The second pillar, Mr. Speaker, is government reform, and these include increasing the use of digitization in the public sector, improving the quality of our workforce and the skills of Bahamians, including investments in education, investments in training, and healthcare. And Mr. Speaker, I've asked my Foreign Affairs Minister to communicate with both the British and the Canadian government so that we can commence a training program for our permanent secretaries, deputy permanent secretaries, and individuals of that level so as to further upgrade our government structure. And continuing much needed fiscal reforms. Mr. Speaker, with the global vaccine efforts well underway, we are transitioning into a phase in the COVID-19 fight where we can prepare for and take advantage of the coming economic rebound. It's going to rebound. It's going to bounce higher. 5-6%. With this in mind, Mr. Speaker, the Accelerate Bahamas plan is designed around 7 specific priorities that move us from what is effectively a policy proposal to the mechanism, to the mechanics of its implementation. I am pleased, Mr. Speaker, to present to this honorable House a copy of that plan. And Mr. Speaker, I will table this at the end of my presentation.
Last year, we tabled the resilient Bahamas. This year,
The priorities of this plan, Mr. Speaker, the priorities of this plan include job creation, small business development, health care and vaccinations, tourism development, public and private sector investment, digitization and innovation, and most importantly, listen now, listen to me carefully, fiscal responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I would like to address a number of these plans at this particular time. As it relates to job creation, the Department of Statistics May 2019 labor force survey showed that prior to the impact of Hurricane Dorian and the COVID-19 pandemic, the unemployment rate was at 9.5%, or 22,635 people. Estimated by the IMF at some 25.6% during the height of the pandemic, the unemployment rate is up from 9.5% in May 2019. By May 2020, this administration was challenged with the task of providing unemployment support to approximately 40,000 Bahamians. And through the tax credit, tax deferral payroll support program, 126 businesses were aided in paying the salaries of 14,000 private sector employees. During the height of pandemic-related shutdowns. This sum, Mr. Speaker, does not include our support for the public aviation sector, and for private schools as well. Private schools, likewise, had to be subsidized. We recognize the impact their meltdown could have on the educational system in our country. And education is important. Mr. Speaker, there were no layoffs at Bahamas Air or Nassau Flight Services. Zero. If there were layoffs, Heinrich, it would have meant more stress, social system. It would have meant that individuals could not meet their rent payment, their mortgage, could lose homes, meltdown within that sector. They would have lost their dignity, their pride. The children would have had to leave private schools. Their lights would have been off. Their water would have been off. Their cable would have likewise been off. And their kids would not have been able to attend school with them. There would have been a severe meltdown of our economy. Meltdown of our social infrastructure. So, Heinrich, I know you agree we did the right thing. Mr. Speaker, to begin reducing the number of unemployment
If you agree, give him a yes.
To begin reducing the number of unemployed, this administration is making targeted investments to incentivize business owners to hire new employees through the provision of a VAT tax credit. And we anticipate 40 million foregone in revenue to fund the government employment incentive program. 40 million. But you must remember now, in a city which is supposed to be marginalized environment, from whence I came, challenged environment, from whence I came, they were incentivized. They had taken advantage only of 2.5 million tax concession and was able to generate 4.8 million. That's a good story. We anticipate, Mrs. 142 jobs they created. Imagine
If more.
we anticipate, Mr. Speaker, we anticipate that the program that I've just spoken about, that is the Employment Incentive Program, will lead to 2,500 jobs being created in the near future.
Goodness.
And businesses will be able to apply for a VAT tax credit to cover the salaries of up to 10 new employees brought onto their payrolls as of June the 1st, 2021. The allowable tax credit will be up to $400 per week per employee. Government incentivized job programs like the one we are proposing work to get people employed and to improve social conditions overall. And according to the 2016 Georgetown Law Center on Poverty and Equality report, these kinds of programs have successfully raised earnings and employment, have benefits beyond the labor market, and are socially cost effective. Incentivized employment programs may reduce family reliance on social welfare benefits, improve school outcomes among the children of workers, lower criminal justice system involvement among both workers and their families. And Mr. Speaker, I'm certain that the Minister of National Security will speak extensively on crime and what we've done for crime. But what I want to say, murder, Mr. Speaker, in 2016 was 111. 2017, 122. We brought that down in 2020 to 73. Armed robbery in 2016 was 783. 783. In 2020, we brought that down to 313. And recidivism, that is individuals having to return to prison. I know you're not speaking time, but I'm speaking to my people now. Amount of people who come out of jail and subsequently return, whatever reason, repeat of criminal activity, that was 21%. We set a goal of bringing recidivism down to 17% by the year 2021. That's the goal. In 2020, we brought recidivism down to 14.9%. And we continue to educate our prisoners through the BTDI program so that when they are released, they can be incorporated and become a part of our society. These incentivized employment programs, Mr. Speaker, may also improve psychological well-being and reduce long-term poverty. But, Mr. Speaker, our labor market concerns are about both the availability of employment and the employability of our citizens. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a prime example of how quickly the business environment can change. Many companies were forced to change their business operational structure to a virtual environment, to use online payment platforms, and to introduce other means to meet customer needs. Further, as the economy expands and economic diversification opens the door, to new business opportunities, our citizens must be prepared to take advantage of these opportunities. From the inception of this administration, we focused on improving education outcomes and enhancing the skills of our workforce. It is for this reason that we have made access to higher education and tertiary level training a key priority. We have continued to provide significant funding to BTVI and UB in this budget to the tune of $4.6 million and $18.5 million respectively. This administration has made good on its promise to provide free tertiary education to all Bahamians. We have kept this pledge, but even more so, we have increased the allocation since the onset of the pandemic to ensure that all Bahamians wishing to go back to school during this downturn are able to do so. Mr. Speaker, when we came in office, we said we wanted each and every Bahamian to become involved in what we call and to accomplish the Bahamian dream. We defined at that time the Bahamian dream as education. One, we've delivered on that. Land and home ownership, we're delivering on that. And the minister responsible for housing will talk about Carmichael. But we have prospects, 2 additions to follow, and we have other family islands. But we know that as we develop homes, family islands, especially Long Island and Exuma, we will have more involvement of homes being converted to Airbnb, etc., becoming a part of the economy, which means that there'll be more tourists, more visiting. And that is why it's essential that not only must we have a new and expanded airport in Exuma, but we must also have a new and expanded airport in Long Island. And I am happy to say, Long Island, that your airport is now out to tender. Mr. Speaker, the other component of the Bahamian dream, education, land and home ownership, of which I spoke, is jobs, of which I've just spoken about, and jobs that be increasing. And the last component is healthcare. The Minister of Health will speak about the Princess Margaret Hospital Iran and the direction of the health sector in our country. As we pivot to job creation, the investments we have made in a more resilient workforce illustrate this government's forward thinking and vision. Mr. Speaker, based on the Department of Statistics May 2019 labor force survey, prior to impacts the impacts of Hurricane Dorian and COVID-19, the Bahamas had a labor force of approximately 237,000, or an unemployment rate of 9.5% or 22,635 people. By May 2020, this administration was challenged with the task of providing support for approximately 40,000 people, or 16.8% of the labor force, through the government's unemployment assistance program administered by the National Insurance Board. We began the tax credit, tax deferral payroll support program immediately, providing businesses with cash that ending up helping to keep over 14,000 private sector jobs intact during the height of the crisis. And these numbers, Mr. Speaker, do not include individuals who are now only working a few days per week, or underemployed, or persons who would have been on furlough. I wish to encourage more companies, including those legacy firms, to move to more enhanced digital platforms and delivery services. These companies should embrace and seize the future. Mr. Speaker, since 2017, my administration has implemented significant efforts to encourage the entrepreneurial and creative spirit of Bahamians. And when this administration came to office, the business license register reflected a total of 24,241 small and medium-sized businesses. We saw the opportunity for growth. We know the potential of the Bahamian people. And I am proud to say that the efforts made to support small businesses by this administration has been fruitful. The number of registered small and medium-sized businesses has grown by 58% since 2017, from 24,241 to 38,227 at the end of 2020. The SMEs that launched over the last 4 years have been characterized by a quality of innovation that is needed in the Bahamian economy. Take, for example, Island Honey, an apiary business started by two young grand Bahamians, Kevin Wild Goose and Risha Forbes. After participating in a 16-week program held by the Ministry of Grand Bahama in partnership with various international agencies, over $180,000 was provided in funding under soft lending terms for 7 participants. Now, Island Honey is producing products such as natural flavored honey, beeswax candles, lip balm, and honey butter. Mr. Speaker, building on the great success of our initiatives to date in helping the growth of small businesses, our plan reflects an even greater commitment to supporting the boosting SMEs, including $35 million support to small business development, principally through the SBDC, $4 million in capitalization of Bahamas Development Bank, implementation of crowdfunding rules, expansion of the Family Island Special Economic Zones concessions, duty-free concessions for all Bahamian SMEs to expand their businesses, and duty concessions on exercise and sports equipment to support our local gyms and fitness houses. Then, Mr. Speaker, as I move through my home base this morning, I promised those within the inner city and the Jonkadu community, JJ, Terry, Car Wash, and many others, that $2 million is provided for Jonkanu groups to assist them in the construction and development of their home base. In addition, Mr. Speaker, in addition, the young, innovative, progressive, aggressive young man who will, with time, be running in the Port Charlotte constituency, Rumiko Archer. I had discussions with that young man, and we're implementing, and have already identified land within the Gladstone Road area for the senior Jonkanu groups that will allow them to construct their home base. And this would allow each of the Jonkanu groups, now we can't put the Valley and Saxons together. Rumiko is a Valley. I'm a Saxon. We are enemies on Bay Street, but outside of Bay Street, we are colleagues, brothers. And we would assist them, Mr. Speaker, in developing their home base, but this would allow them, we would design what we call a Jonkanu village, and would allow them to demonstrate their arts and their crafts, attracting tourists who can purchase paraphernalia, dolls, see the evolution of the Saxons, the evolution of the Valley, etc. That's absolutely. Pine Ridge, you agree? So let me repeat, Mr. Speaker. $2 million have been allotted for the Jonkanu groups to assist them with the construction of their home base, and land, more than 20 acres of land have been identified in the Gladstone Road area so that they can construct their home base and we can establish a Jonkanu attractive, tourist attractive village. So let me say to Peter, JJ, Car Wash, and others that Jonkanu will rise. I called Rumiko Archer. I called the next member of Parliament, Rumiko Archer. Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fort Charlotte.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Typically I'm very quiet here in the House, and I listen quite contentedly to what's taking place. And for most of the last few months, I've sort of graciously kept silent on most matters related to, actually for the last 4 years, for the most matters that are taking place in Fort Charlotte. And I think it's, never said it publicly, but I think it's quite disrespectful that as the current member of Parliament,
Honorable members.
I think the current member of Parliament sits here in the House of Assembly, the duly elected and unceremoniously deselected member of Parliament sits here. I think it's quite disrespectful that my party would speak to the refer to him as the next member of parliament. There's no guarantee. People still have a say in that matter. But I would ask that I wouldn't ask for it to be stricken from the record. I would just ask for more respect for the current sitting member of parliament until such time as I graciously decide that I'm going to move aside, if that's what I'm going to do. But until such time, I would just ask my dear Prime Minister to to just give me a little bit more respect. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker,
Chair recognizes the member
I
for
meant
Kalani.
no disrespect nor ill intent to the sitting member for Fort Shelley. Mr. Speaker, to continue to grow, small and medium-sized businesses need to continue to grow at home and look beyond our borders and aggressively explore opportunities to export. It is for this reason that during the 2021-22 budget communication, I mentioned the need for an enabling environment to support our SMEs participating in international trade activities. I am pleased to remind members that the Bahamian public, that as recommended by the Economic Recovery Committee, the Bahamas is already leveraging parts of the CARIFORM UK and CARIFORM EU partnership agreements, which provide companies with duty-free and quota-free access to European markets. You will hear more about trade export opportunities when the Minister of Financial Services, Trade and Immigration makes his contribution. And Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic has illustrated, like no other event in our recent history, the importance of an accessible and resilient healthcare system. As a physician, I know too well the challenges faced in our healthcare sector. And as Prime Minister, I saw firsthand the struggle of our public health staff as they contended with the influx of COVID-19 patients and the complications that this infectious disease imposed on hospital operations. We must improve the infrastructure of our healthcare system so that we are better able to manage the next public health crisis. We must also make the system more accessible and efficient in order to reduce the cost of healthcare, to alleviate the pressure on public purse, and to free up public resources for other crucial policy initiatives. It is for this reason, Mr. Speaker, that improving the health of this nation is a key pillar in our economic growth strategy as articulated in my budget communication last week. And this will include greater measures to respond to the high incidence of obesity in the Bahamas. We have seen firsthand, Mr. Speaker, what a lack of proper health facilities can do to a nation, particularly in a pandemic. And that is why the $70 million investment in the Princess Margaret Hospital is critical. Further, while the current budget allocates some $19 million to improve the Rand Memorial Hospital, this is only for this year's budget. The total planned expenditure to improve capacity at the Rand in Freeport is estimated at $39 million over 2 years. To improve healthcare accessibility, we are investing $1 million in a telemedicine initiative so that the Cat Island or Ragged Island or Ambrosian can access specialist-level healthcare without the expense of traveling to New Providence. We are re-implementing a project that was abandoned by the PLP when they were last in office. Both Abaco and Andres were already connected via tele. We understand, Mr. Speaker, that it is critically important that Bahamians throughout our far-flung communities have access to the same level of health care as those in New Providence or Grand Bahama. And Mr. Speaker, the planned investment to improve care at PMH is one of the largest investments in health care in modern Bahamian history. The last investment was the $76 million critical care block at PMH, which opened in 2013. But before the opposition attempts to claim this as their accomplishment, I would like to remind the Bahamian people that and this House that the contract for the last major health investment, the design of the critical care block, and securing the necessary funding was done under the previous F&M administration. This means that the two major health investments at PMH in recent decades will be accomplished by the F&M government. Again, Mr. Speaker, the other side will talk you to death about their health care plans. Or they will talk and they will promise and they will talk even some more. But we, Mr. Speaker, are a party of action. As a doctor, I have to act to save lives, while leader of opposition, mostly a talker. Mr. Speaker, once again, the nation was confused by the assertion of some that we were waiting to see if cruise ships returned or if tourism numbers rebounded to their 2019 levels. We are not waiting. We are getting ready for the rebound and boom in tourism. As people feel more comfortable about traveling and the number of people who are being vaccinated around the world steadily increases, we are implementing our comprehensive COVID-19 response plan for destination marketing to take advantage of the pent-up demand. We are not waiting to see what happens with cruise ships. We are positioning ourselves to extract greater value from the industry. At the same time, we are readying the country for the new opportunities that will be made available through home porting. The Bahamas Hotel and Tourism Association called home porting a win-win and referred to it as good news for the Bahamas. Because of home porting, we can expect increased airlift and increased hotel occupancy with all the accompanying economic benefits. Our message to the rest of the world is the Bahamas is open for business and we are ready to welcome you to our many island destinations. As tourists come back in force, Mr. Speaker, we are shoring up our local market and product offerings to provide many unique experiences. For the many Bahamians concerned that the home porting option will only benefit the major hotels and foreign investors, we are giving Bahamians the opportunity now. We are giving Bahamians the opportunity now to increase the room inventory for these additional guests to experience our Bahamian hospitality. The COVID-19 pandemic taught many Bahamians about the importance of maintaining a diverse stream of income to remain resilient in times of crisis. Many Bahamians and residents, Mr. Speaker, have embraced this philosophy in recent years and have begun to invest in new streams of income in the vacation rental market through popular online portals such as Airbnb. And according to recent data, as at the end of March 2021, some 4,222 Bahamians and residents participated in this market, earning more than $14 million in the month alone. However, Mr. Speaker, 28% of the rented properties consisted of 3-bedroom or larger rentals. That also indicates a large proportion of the rental properties are located in typical second home hotspots such as Exuma with 498 listings, Central Eleuthera with 409 listings, and Bimini with 185 listings. To ensure that more Bahamians take advantage of the increased need for room capacity now and in the future, I am pleased to announce that I have directed the Small Business Development Center to reserve a minimum up to $2 million in funding to provide funding to support Bahamians who wish to enter the Bahamian home rental market. And this new SBDC initiative will have built-in covenants to ensure that successful applicants follow through on preparing these properties for guests and that they will list the properties for short-term rentals. The program, Mr. Speaker, will also include consultancy assistance to help guide applicants on how to list and manage these properties successfully. The reality is that the emergence of the vacation home rental market creates a wonderful and extraordinary opportunity for more and more Bahamians to become owners and direct beneficiaries in the tourism industry. This is Pine Ridge, diversification within the tourism sector. Thousands have already done so, but there's opportunity for thousands more as more and more visitors are choosing these accommodations, especially for extended stays. Bahamians might wish to convert existing homes to take advantage of this market. Bahamians might refurbish an ancestral home in one of the family islands. Or Bahamians might wish to collaborate with like-minded investors, pooling resources to build and rent accommodations and cottages throughout the country. Bahamians in our southern islands will be granted a new slate of concessions like duty and VAT concessions on the full range of materials they will need to build or renovate a house or to start or expand a business. I want to remind the House that Andres is likewise included with the Southern Islands.
Yes.
For the residents of these islands, there's never been a better time to invest in that cottage or to refurbish an ancestral home, to welcome visitors from around the world, and to become a direct owner of the hospitality sector. This, Mr. Speaker, is about ownership. And it gives Bahamians the chance to retain a great piece of the tourism pie. The emergence of platforms for online commerce now permits ordinary Bahamians to become owners in the hospitality trade and to explore so many other opportunities to deliver goods and services all over the world. My government will expand its direct support for Bahamians in the vacation homes market and in the digital space. And this administration firmly believes that increasing revenue diversification for low-income families will build a more resilient society. Unlike some others who talk a big game about supporting the small man, this Prime Minister and my administration are committed to working families and the empowerment of the poor. They are about talking while we are about doing. Mr. Speaker, the opposition seems to want people to believe that only the Bahamas is experiencing the ravages of COVID-19, that we are the only country contending with increased deficits and debt, that we are the only country struggling to rebound from the global economic downturn, and the Bahamas is not alone in this experience. The global evidence is there to show that as a responsible government, we too made the prudent choice to save lives and to protect livelihoods. We made the prudent choice, Mr. Speaker, to fund the gap arising from the extraordinary expenditures and losses in revenue from Hurricane Dorian and COVID-19 through necessary borrowing. We kept the faith with the Bahamian people. The global death toll from COVID-19 may rise into the tens of millions. Much of the Americas remain in a grave state with millions dead, severe lockdowns, and economic disasters, all of which may continue for some time. We too remain in the emergency phase of the pandemic. But we have an opportunity to move beyond this emergency phase because of the availability of the vaccines, because of our continued discipline in the use of public health measures, because of a turnaround in the United States of America, and because of the many policies and programs we have put in place to take advantage of the recovery. Mr. Speaker, many Bahamians are now telling me that they feel and believe that things are getting better. We are on the right track, even though there's much more work to be done. We are moving forward. Our recovery is beginning. Just as I promised to keep Bahamians alive and safe, I solemnly promise the Bahamian people that the country is moving forward and that more jobs are on the way. Crisis call for making tough and sometimes unpopular decisions. My government pursued the right policies and made the tough choices. It is called Pine Ridge leadership. We value the trust placed in us by the Bahamian people to govern. We will continue to serve our nation in the choices we make to provide opportunity and ownership and hope and recovery. Mr. Speaker, I have learned as a young boy growing up, shining shoes, selling newspaper, vaping, pumping gas, and patching tires, working at a tailor shop, that all productive and honest work is dignified because of the dignity of the person doing the work. Let us remember the dignity of all labor and the dignity of work as we celebrate Labor Day this coming Friday. Mr. Speaker, let me repeat. Let us remember the dignity of all labor and the dignity of work as we celebrate Labor Day this coming Friday. I remember this lesson every day as Prime Minister, as I work to get our people back to work.
Honorable members.
And to provide
Honorable member for Pine Ridge.
And a greater ownership stake for all Bahamians, no matter their circumstances of birth. Because of whence I came, I carry working families in my heart and in my soul every day. Speaker, I only want to say a little to the residents, the constituents of Kalani. I want to thank Kalani for giving me this opportunity to serve in this parliament and to serve in this position. Yes, they may not see me on many occasions, but the team moving about with regularity while I move with others. I am quite aware of the challenges, the issues they face, and be assured we will deal with those issues. We have addressed in Kalani new renovated and refurbished basketball court in the Mount Pleasant area, and the cabana, which was destroyed by the hurricane. They are now completed. In the Gambia village community, we have constructed new basketball court, park. We have resurfaced the roadway, constructed sidewalks, speed bumps, etc. And we were instrumental in ensuring that an individual in the community who needed a new home, that home was constructed. And the team from the Kalani constituency ensure and will continue to ensure that his home is completely furnished. I want to remind the members of Kalani that though we have only built one within the Gambia constituency at this time, it is the intention to build as many as is necessary to move our people out of poverty. Within the West Bay Street, we've had one of the worst roads here in New Providence, and that road has now been repaired, and the delay was as it was waiting for the water lines to be repaired. Once that had been done, our roads have been surfaced. We are now constructing a new roundabout at the Blake Road, West Bay Street area, so as to minimize the possibility of any future death or accident. In the Twin Lakes area, an area that was crying for well in excess of 10 years, we have completed the roadway with speed bumps, lots of houses, the roadway with speed bumps and lights, water, and other infrastructure. In the park opposite Nesbitt, we've completed the basketball court and the parks, and we are getting ready to refurbish and repair the bathroom facility on the park, as well as the cabana there. And just recently, just last week, Mr. Speaker, last week Sunday, I met with the Sea Beach Association members, and I can assure them that the complaints that they would have expressed to me with respect to odor and flooding are being addressed. The speed bumps will be instituted as they have been addressed, and the obstructed view of entering and leaving their community has been addressed. And crime will continue to decrease in that area as the CCTV continue to expand. I will meet this Sunday, Mr. Speaker, with the Kalani Shores Association to again see what their needs, their cries may be, so that they too may be met. Then, Mr. Speaker, within the Tropical Garden constituency, we've commenced the road pavement project. However, that has been slowed because of repairs to the waterworks that are being done.
Honorable members.
The illegal filling of wetlands are being addressed as certain sectors, especially that of Tropical Garden and West Bay Street or Airport Road, that filling of that wetland land can compromise the airport runway, which may start flooding. And that has likewise been addressed. I want to remind them that we continue our social program, of which I need not expand, but the members of Kalani are quite aware of such. And I urge all Bahamians to become vaccinated. As the United States Homeland Security Secretary just said, that the U.S. is looking very closely at requiring proof of vaccination for travel. And therefore, I urge and advise all Bahamians to become vaccinated. Mr. Speaker, may God continue to grant us wisdom and discernment. May God bless the workers and people of the Bahamas. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I so move.
Oh, yes. Order that the document be brought up. Where the extra copies? Order that the document do lie on the table. Thank you, honorable member. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Pine Wood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As always, I rise by the grace of God and for the good of Pine Wood. I rise reflecting on the comments Angliston just whispered to me just now, saying how, as we speak, Pine Wood flooding. And all I could say is just the way you left it. And the thing about it is, they think there's some joke. You know, and I wasn't going to start off with this, you know, Mr. Speaker, but what point of order?
Honorable member, the chair recognizes honorable member for Angliston on a point of order.
On a point of order, I made a comment from my seat to the colleague in his seat, but for him to say that I consider it a joke, because this member, and I can let you speak, but he's left it there for 4 years. So, you know, just as we left it, just as you leaving it, just as you are leaving it. And now I'm sure we can hear some promises, Mr. Speaker, but I don't want the member to say that I consider the plight of the people of Pinewood a joke, because it's not funny. And so I don't want him to attribute that to me. Speak for yourself, attribute to yourself your own emotions about the issue, but don't do it to me.
Okay. I want Angliston to recall that I said it to her in a whisper privately, and I stand on this floor and saying it to her face now. Because you giggled when I said it. So I'm not retracting that, because that was an inappropriate statement, knowing the gravity, the pain, the suffering, the anguish that people feel about the flooding in Pinewood. To sit here and even say that. And unless she's disowning the statement, I am justified in saying that.
Honorable members, the chair recognizes Angliston on a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. The member has attributed to me that I consider the flooding of Pinewood a trivial matter or a joke, and I ask him to withdraw it, or if he's not prepared to do that, Mr. Speaker, and it's a personal reflection also, which rules do not allow, I ask that it be struck from the record if the member does not do the honorable thing.
Since I wanted to remain on the record, Speaker, I would say it is indeed my sincere feeling that she takes it as a joke, and that is my opinion in this house today. And I am entitled to my opinion.
Honorable members. I was hoping to avoid this type of exchange.
Yes, it's unfortunate.
But honorable members, the member for Angliston is raising a point of order with respect to a comment that was attributed to her. But my understanding now is the member for Pine Wood is removing the The matter is attributed to the member for Angleston, and he's suggesting now that it is his opinion on the matter. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, I want to put the record to reflect his opinion is false and is perhaps based on the fact that this member feels a level of failure after 4 years of representation in Pinewood, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members. Carry on, honorable member for Pinewood.
Mr. Speaker,
Honorable member for Pinewood, just a moment. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael on a point of order.
You to yield for 1 minute. And just to clarify something, this current budget has some $2 million in it to start this drainage challenge, to deal with the drainage challenge that was left you in Pinewood, that you have been working so assiduously to try to do something about. We are seriously committed to Pinewood and to helping you deal with the challenges that have been there for decades, that you are now, Pinewood, that you are now dealing with. This is your government.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, today I am wearing the exact suit, the exact tie, the exact shirt that I wore the first time I presented in this House. The first time. The first time I presented in this House, Mr. Speaker, and the Prime Minister said it, and I said it here, we had a budget that wasn't our budget. So take that year out. And in that budget that wasn't our budget, had nothing in it from the PLP to address anything in Pinewood. The year after that, we were struggling with $1 billion worth of debt left behind, $900 million. And they will be in here disingenuously running on with deficit and transparency and all kind of things. And why are we running a deficit? But you start us off with $1 billion in debt. This is before the $3 billion of Dorian. This is before all the quarter of a billion dollars in feeding the public. This is above and beyond everything. You start us off after the highest VAT hike in the history of this country. I think we raised about $1 billion in VAT and left $1 billion in debt. And right now, in the middle of a crisis where, honestly, in my heart, I would have understood, but I just cannot as a member of parliament, but I would have understood if the money wasn't there for Pinewood. My job as a member of parliament is by hook or the crook to make it happen. I would have understood because right after that first budget, we got missed. The second budget, there was $1 million in it to start the programs, the pilot programs to get it up and going. COVID hit. So literally by our second budget, money is already started being poured in to address the matter. You know, I'm wearing this same suit, Mr. Speaker, and let me play for the record of the House my first presentation that I want to drop Day 3 about our community. Pinewood is renowned for the flooding. And it amazes me how for so long these matters have not gotten sufficient traction in terms of a solution. It is difficult because this debate and this budget is not this government's wholehearted budget. But this MP has made the commitment and has already begun to forward recommendations and documentations to ensure that that matter is addressed. And I would say, without any regard for personal reputation or otherwise, whatever it takes that I must do, no matter how high or low that I must go, that matter must be resolved. There are too many persons who are traumatized by the annual expectations of rain and flooding in that area. And if you believe what we said about Genesis and the Tower of Babel, there is no problem that cannot be fixed if we really go at it. Fixing the flooding in my area is not just a matter of simple flooding. I've listened to us investing almost $30 million in Carnival, and the statement was, we didn't expect a return in investment. Well, then why you can't invest $10 million then and fix a problem in Pinewood whose return will yield tens of millions in value? Can I qualify that? If you fix the flooding problem, then the next time somebody looks for a house for sale in Pinewood and see a $120,000 4-bedroom house, that's a deal. Then see Pinewood and say, next. If we address the flooding problem in Pinewood, the value and the equity in houses without anything being done will rise. And calculate that over the thousands of houses in the community. The environment of the community will change. I want to say to this House that that is one of the greatest investments of public funds that we can ever make for a single community by addressing such a need. That is what I said my first day in the House of Assembly. That has been my ambition, my drive, my calling. And I thank God that soon the people will see not only what the dog been doing, but the dog been cooking for Pinewood. And I invite them, our Deputy Prime Minister, had this early opportunity to take the time to come in Pinewood and introduce himself by probably a Zoom meeting, because I'm serious about the emergency orders. We got to fix this so we can get our countries up. We can probably do a Zoom meeting with him and his expert people so the people can understand that this is not a panacea. And I would invite Doc to come when it's time to break that ground. And I want him to take the kill and show the people his face when they realize that shovels in the ground for the first time in Pinewood. Listen here, Pinewood has always had a Deputy Prime Minister floating around in it. You know, you would have seen him in yellow raincoat, Philip Braid Davis. He hangs out at Mimi's on the main Pinewood Road, day in, day out. He brought Perry Christie there to visit people in Pinewood, one of our centenarians in Pinewood. But at the end of the day, he has done nothing to Pinewood. But yet we have our Minister of Works in this F&M government who has made this happen and sure it was in the budget. You left a budget with nothing in it for Pinewood. Pinewood had a cabinet minister. Pinewood had an AG. Pinewood under you guys had powerful people. And all they got now is a bus driver who believe in God and have respect for leadership. Y'all will sit there and run on back and forward talking about how Doc is this and try to make it seem like he's so evil and he don't like anybody and he don't this and that. But he's not a respective person. I say to Pine Ridge, if he realizes what the scripture says, if you want friends, be friendly, he can get more done. You yourself, Mr. Speaker, open up when God said to respect leadership. The chaplain open up and talk about faith. And yet I hear things, even attributed to you, Mr. Speaker, as much as I love you, but mirages, faith is a mirage. In the business community, it's moved by faith. It's called the bulls and the bears. If the market is fearful, it goes down. The F&M is giving hope to the community. Success starts with hope. As a man thinketh, so is he. Behind everything, there was a thought. Behind every thought, there was a thinker. We are going into the dreams of the people and over the hill, and we are asking them what you're thinking, what you're dreaming. And we are taking their money on record level. We just committed another $250 million for your dream. We've always built our economy on things like foreign investments, and that is true. But what the Doc cooking this time is he's building the dream on you. He's building it on you. He understands to diversify this economy. You must get small businesses up and running. We sit here running on with this budget under this government. Let me tell you something here. Know what the true economy in your country is. All this money you run on with, panicking the Bahamian people about this budget and this deficit, only represent 20% of our nation's economy. That 80% represents you and you and you and you over the hill people who are going to rise up to a common loftier goal. I sit here and I remember Angliston when we decide that we're gonna give hope to the over the hill area. Raise the word gentrification. How could you turn to people that you have always called grassroots, which is our way of saying poor, and when there's hope brought to them, you come and say gentrification. You did that in this house, Angliston.
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston
Speaker,
on a point of order.
I realize the member for Pinewood is very stimulated. But I may, as it relates to the over the hill project, I made first observation I made and protest was that I did not include Angliston. The second concern I raised
It's there now.
was whether that we should monitor the way in which possibly people who do not live in that community go into those communities and gobble up properties to take advantage of those concessions and tax breaks, and as a result, change the nature and character of that community and push people out. That is a documented, scientifically factual state of affairs that has happened all over the world. And I express the concern.
Honorable Member Ferguson.
No, no,
Honorable Member.
no. He's
Honorable member.
misrepresenting what I said.
Honorable Member.
He's misrepresenting what I said.
Honorable Member.
I am not. You said that.
Yes, you are.
The member for
Yes.
Pinewood indicated that you used the word gentrification.
No, I used the word. It did not include Angliston. That was my objection.
Member, are you denying that you used that word? Because what you're doing now is you're giving an explanation and not a point of order.
No, the member is using a word that I used in my contribution as a way to skew what it was that I said.
Well,
I did not object to the Over the Hill program. No, I did not object.
Member for Angliston.
I did not object on that basis. No, I did not.
You don't have a point of order then. Your point is not well taken.
No, I'm saying that, no.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Pinewood.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
Go ahead, Speaker.
you know, I grew up the son of a preacher man, you know. My godfather is a preacher. My mom I would love that. You know, and I often say this about Carl Ramming. I say, but you do child abuse, you know. I'm serious. I love my dad, but boy, there's one thing I really hate, but I say, but you do child abuse. I can be sitting next to my pa right there on the pulpit, be talking, cracking joke. I reading the program. Next thing you know, he touched me and said, and it's called the 3-step, Mr. Speaker. There's 3 steps between the seat and the pulpit. And every time he do that, trust me, when I say angry, I get so angry, I could blow up. But within 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, and I stand before that pulpit, I do my job. When I represent Pinewood and the people, it's not Ruben's emotion. I have to represent the interests of my people. That is my commitment. What I said to them in the beginning is what I will do to the end. Everything that I've done in Pinewood, if you take the time and you follow the script, you could search it and you could see it like a script because I don't forget what I say. Because my honor and my word is all I have. And when I sit here and realize that this is another wave of budgets that can benefit the Bahamian people and empower the 80%, I shudder to think the kind of chemical warfare the opposition will use during this debate to try to destroy the hope of people, to get them vexed at the F&M, so that they will not take advantage of opportunities in the midst of crisis that will benefit them. How dare we go to persons that we call over the hill, you know, we mean poor. Just like when we say life is key, we know we mean rich. And the government is pumping millions of dollars specifically for them, and he did include, Doc did cook something up for Angliston, and Angliston is also included. How I remember that, because Pinewood isn't. Included in the exempted area. I remember that Angliston was included because I remember that Pinewood wasn't. What's an issue with that statement?
Honorable member for
Angliston was agreed to by the Prime Minister on the floor that Angliston would be included.
For Pinewood. The chair recognizes
On point of order, the member is not correct. Angliston is not to this date included in these concessions or tax breaks. Angliston is not included. Now, I'm hearing that something was laid in this parliament for some future to do. I know, you know, we got a couple more months for a general election. Angliston is not included.
See, that's the problem, you know, and I want our Bahamian people to know, listen, so Lyndon say, don't mind the noise in the market, you know. Mind the price of the fish. I find many times when guys discourage you about talking to a gal is because he want it for himself. They don't see, they're afraid. They're afraid. No, they're afraid. They are afraid. Listen here. They are afraid that if the Bahamian people even go and try to taste with dog cooking, they become permanent patronage of the F&M restaurant. They are afraid that if you buy in to come into the F&M, the SDBC would not only just give you funds, they would help you with your business, mentor you, make sure that your chances of success exceed the chances of failure. But you're afraid that somebody may go in and come out a believer. That's what you're afraid of. So you're going to talk all kind of foolishness. But I want to tell my people, listen to the facts, you know. After I would have heard the Prime Minister's last presentation last week, boy, listen, I go and call Mark Thompson. Everybody know Mark Thompson, you know, the business guru. I say, hey, Mark, listen to your dread. I got to figure out how I can get some small business plans and stuff work together for my people, baby. Got to figure something out. Because you know what it is to be able to start a business with your inventory, with those kind of exemptions for your inventory and help and support? You know, man, listen here. If Bahamas Striping could have started with $5,000 and be where he is, the man who is the Jamaica Bahama brand started out the back trunk of his car. And I know because my office, I've been trying to call him. Because I'm going to tell you there's some things I want to do, and I need my people to hear from people who did it. If they could start small and build to where they are today, why can't we, when we finally have an administration that ain't just doing it now, that has been doing it from day one? Listen here, we made a promise when we came into you from election times that we was going to give you $25 million to help you with your small businesses. Less than 4 years in, it's up to $50 million. Sometimes you need to see what the dog cooking, even though dog sometimes may not even realize it himself, but you got to watch the trend. The trend is this. If you show Doc you're interested and you're buying the program, he keep pumping into it and pumping into it and pumping into it, pumping into it, because the desire is for you to succeed. No, they need to understand this. Our election promise was $25 million. We had all excuses during the crisis. What other logical reason than the man care about you and small business development to double something when you already met your promise and political commitment? Think about it. Brad Davis Lewis made a political commitment for mortgage relief.
Honorable member.
The honorable member for Cat Island, my apologies. The honorable member for Cat Island, those made a commitment of mortgage relief. Spent tens of millions of dollars that only paid salaries. And it's like the story of Abraham and God asked Abraham by Sodom and Gomorrah and say, listen, if there's 5 souls here to be saved, how many souls, how many houses got relief? You know, but they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. I'm tempted to ask the member for Exuma, who is a professional a businessman, run a successful financial organization, that if he had a manager who represented his company and who went ahead and spent $30 million on private property without permits and everything else and waste the company money, would you fire him? Or would you stand up and support that? Would your shareholders look and say, listen here, this man got to go? No, I'm asking practical questions. See, because if you do it in your life, you should be able to do it in the public life. That is a lot of money. But they can stand up here talking about transparency and accountability. And honestly, for me, that's a dangerous thing, because yes, y'all call this an election budget. I call this a continuation. But I ain't not ashamed to call it an election budget, you know. Because every single one of y'all, when your baseball team have bases loaded, they down by 2 runs, and the batter is up in the last inning, you don't complain and say it's an electric budget. You say, hit a home run. You don't go and tell the Bahamian people, don't come to him because that's just election money. Jesus, my Lord, man. They say money ain't late. No. See, whenever I stand here, I don't lose myself. That's my daughter, Robin Ramming, sitting right over there. This is a power in this house. This is a power out of this house. I've been Reuben ramming too long. I don't have time to pretend. People love people who they could predict. If I say I'm going to do my best, I'm going to do my best. If I say I support you, I support you. If I say I don't support you, I'll tell you why I won't support you. This is not a game to me. We're creating an ungrateful spirit among our people. And right now, I need to actually grab this budget, like how Jesus lifted up the 5 loaves from the child and said, Lord, you know this ain't enough, but I need you to bless it. But you're cursing the actual faith of the people. And blessing this is not a far-fetched, Blessing this is the same as saying, bless all of those entrepreneurs who get their shares in this. May they fruitful and multiply. How hard is that? You will not hear the opposition do that. So quite frankly, all those tours I've seen on Facebook with the member from Cat Island taking photos with vendors on the side of the road. But yet he will not, I guarantee that, stand up and support this budget that benefit the very same people. But you see, no, this is the problem here. The problem here, only thing more valuable than money is time. We still get a whole year. And if the Prime Minister wants, he can extend it to August. If he wants, he can legally extend the election to August. And so the opposition is trying to discourage the Bahamian people from taking advantage to what Doc has been cooking.
Opportunities.
The opportunities to help them. And literally is telling them, wait a whole year, and then we could come, and we could do something like that for you.
Pipeline people.
I sit here many times, Mr. Speaker, and I am fearful for my country and the offering of leadership even from the opposition, I look at Jeffrey Epstein and I see how the royal princess and former presidents running from the scandal of Jeffrey Epstein. Could you imagine if the leader of the opposition wins an election and the NIGAD case go a certain way and we end up in a situation? Could you imagine that?
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Speaker. No accusations or allegations were made. A statement was made that how this member will react when they start talking with NIGAD and me. Obviously, right, this is no place for slanderous innuendos. There's no place for it here. Right? And I invited you to have him withdraw those comments.
Honorable member for Pinewood.
Because I don't want to go down that NIGAD road.
No, that's fine.
I won't go down here because
Honorable member for Pinewood.
let's not start here.
Honorable member.
I'm not accusing him of being dirty. I'm saying I know my hand is clean.
Honorable member.
Go ahead, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Cat Island raised an issue, really an issue of privilege.
Yes.
With respect to the statement that you made linking him to NIGAD. I think that's inappropriate. I think you should withdraw it. If you are not prepared to withdraw it, I will.
If you think it's inappropriate, Mr. Speaker, and just for clarification, I speak to something, there's similar things. There were things raised against members here in this House who were named for matters, just named in court cases. No, we can continue. Just named in matters. And I was raised, and it's raised even by Cal Allen. I didn't assume or impute any guilt, but there is a reality.
Honorable member, I said I felt that was inappropriate because.
If you felt it's inappropriate, Speaker, trust me, I have a lot of respect for you personally. I yield to that. That's not germane That's not germane. That's not. I yield to you. Okay.
You withdraw?
I yield to you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Did you withdraw? You withdraw the statement?
Okay, I withdraw.
Stand,
You would have
you have
nothing.
to stand and do that.
I yield, Mr. Pretty Guy. I withdraw. I withdraw.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, and to suspend for our luncheon break. So, Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the business of this House suspends until 3 p.m., where the member for Pinewood will once again. I don't like to use the word mount the podium, but he will stand and speak the issue. So I now so move, Mr. Speaker, that the House suspends until 3 p.m. Second, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House suspends until 3 p.m. this afternoon. As many members that are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon.